Hello and welcome to this Farming Simulator 22 video on what is the most efficient way to make silage. So here we are in our field. According to Precision Farming, we should have roughly 550,000 litres of grass here, and we've got our Ultra in the background with a butterfly mower on it, ready to begin cutting it. And the intention here is to do that on courseplay and then use that same mower courseplay to run most of the harvesters and pickups where possible. So the next thing we need to go and do is take a look at the kit that we're running this experiment with. Okay, so let's take a look at the different scenarios we've got here. So first up, scenario 1, we are dealing with the fast bale. So we're running the Kubota variant of it here. So we've got a Kubota tractor, the largest of the ones in the DLC, paired with the Kubota variant of the fast bale. And for pickup duties, we've got the JCB fast track because it goes fast. It's 70 kilometers an hour and paired with the Anderson bale loader. Scenario 2, we are dealing now with larger round bales, so we are running a Z-Saw here with the Pottinger, which will do us 150 centimeter round bales, which it will wrap. And again, paired with a fast track with an Anderson bale loader. Scenario 3, so we're into the rectangular bales here, and we have a class axion with a class baler, and because obviously, so that's putting out 220 centimeter bales, which it cannot wrap, so we'll need a wrapper, the Kern wrapper here, and together with a tractor I like to use if I can, which is the Ultra, which is a lovely little chunky little tractor. And that one is paired with another fast track, you see a pattern here, and that has to be paired with an Arcusin for rectangular bale pickup. We then move on to scenario 4. So scenario 4, we are into forage wagons. So we have here a fast track with the biggest of all the base game forage wagons, which is the Krone, which takes 56,000 litres. And then we will pair that in the silo with a big Fendt Vario with wheel weights and with the Weber compactor on the back to make sure compaction goes as fast as it can. We then have a forage harvester, so we have a class Jaguar here with the grass pickup on the front, paired with a fast track, and this time the fast track has the biggest base game trailer I can find, as close to the capacity of the Krone as possible. So this is a 55,000 litre trailer versus the Krone's 56,000 litres. And again, with another vent for silage compaction. So scenarios 1 to 5 were sort of the most straightforward silage scenarios we come up with, and then try to make things even more efficient. So it should be no surprise that we should in theory be able to make things much more efficient if we had more tractors doing the same job. So here we have 2 of the fast tracks with the Krone forage wagon on the back, and another vent again for silo duties. Then this one, so scenario 7, when I was looking through how all the balers worked, it turns out that this Vermeer self-propelled baler is ever so slightly faster than all the other balers. So pretty much everything else runs at 17 kilometers an hour. This runs at 18 kilometers an hour, And the question is, will that extra kilometre an hour over the course of baling a large field make any sort of decisive impact? You have to bear in mind it doesn't wrap, so you have to run a wrapper along behind it, which may or may not make things less efficient. Remains to be seen. And again, paired with a fast track with an Anderson. And then finally, can we make things even more efficient if we look at capacity and autoload? So this is a script based one, so it won't work for console people, I'm afraid. But so we have class axiom, class baler, the Ultra Valmet with the towed wrapper, and then we've got a Volvo, which is from the Platinum DLC. Obviously you can use other trucks, they all go about the same sort of speed. It's just a nice little, really like that truck. And pairing that with the biggest auto load mod trailer I could find, so this will take 41 rectangular bales, so it is a huge capacity. Maybe that'll prove decisive. So that's all the scenarios. And then let's look at the things I didn't do in the end. So these are things I considered and then discounted. So here, and we have the Go Wheel static baler, which is a really nice model with some lovely animations, and it is fun to use. Thing of it is that the capacity in this is smaller than a forage wagon, so smaller than the large forage wagon I was using. And so what that means is the forage wagon spends a lot of time standing around waiting to unload into this, and so that slows everything down. It may be if you paired this with a smaller forage wagon that matched more closely the capacity of this, you keep it moving. It's worth a go. I mean, you can auto load with a little bit of finesse out of it onto an Anderson bale loader, so it's possible you could go reasonably fast with this, but I don't think it's going to be as fast as some of the other options we looked at. And then finally, the forage harvester efficiency snafu. So I tried quite a long time to make this work. So in theory, what if one forage harvester with 3 carting tractors, so this thing can keep running constantly? And that, it's a good theory. It ought to work. The problem is it really doesn't want to automate. So I tried a number of things. So put this on courseplay because I was running for consistency pretty much all of the harvesters, pickup wagons, balers on courseplay, so they took the same route, took the same amount, well, not the same amount of time, but they took the same route, so it's consistent. And I could not get this to play nicely with so if I was running this on courseplay and I was driving the tractors, as soon as the tractor went even slightly out of range of what this perceived its operating range was, it stopped, and then there's a lot of faff to try and get it back in range, get it moving again. On corners it really was not fun. And so I tried, okay, well, I'll drive this and run these in auto drive. And that started off okay, so I was skipping a row so we could take longer corners so this could keep up. But if I stopped for even a second, these started doing a little running around in circles dance. It was difficult to change tractors. When I stopped, when this one filled up, it then decided it was going to crash into the harvester on its route to try and exit the field. It was a pain, so in the end, I gave up. I think it ought to be fast. If you can get it to work, I think this could conceivably be one of the fastest options for collecting silage off the field. But I couldn't make it work, so it was canned from the experiment. And that's it. That's all the things I looked at. It also worth mentioning, I considered other static balers like the extractor, but it requires manual bale handling to get the baler into the extractor, and let's go slow everything down. So I don't think, from an efficiency standpoint, it's competitive. So the next thing we need to do once we've collected the grass off the field, and for this to be a vaguely realistic experiment, is we've got to take that grass somewhere, either to be stored into bales or to put it into a silo and compact it if we're using a forage harvester. So I set up a little farm, what I feel is a realistic distance away from the field, so that we do have to consider travel time. Let's go take a look. And the reason I'm doing this is because when I started this, one of my theories was that the amount of time you spent carting the grass over to be stored would have a significant impact on the actual total time it took to handle and deal with the silage. So as we come into the farm here, I've given it a nice wide driveway just in case we're operating more than one piece of kit, so that they don't hopefully collide. And we'll then move down the driveway and we'll see that on the left we have a silage bunker, a drive-through silage bunker, in the hope that that would be faster and I would not have to deal with courseplay reversing and dumping in a silage bunker. And then we have, as we come round and past the silage bunker, we've got just a large area where I intend to store bales. So back in the field, and we're ready to get the mower going. As I say, going to run that on courseplay. It does lead to a little bit of a funky course, but given that I'm going to run all of the harvesters, forage wagons, balers on the same course, it should be consistent in terms of how they behave and what they do and how fast they go. Let's get the mower going. So while we're watching this go, I wanted to just quickly cover what I thought might happen in this test. Obviously this is me from the future, so I know what the answer is, but I wasn't sure when I began this whether it would be working speed that would be significant, travel time, would it be the handling, what exactly would make this would be the decisive factor. And it's interesting what we found. But now that the mower is done, we're ready to start the test. Everything's set, everything is on the starting line, waiting to go, and the test will begin when I press the go button on courseplay for each of the different things. As I was putting this video together, I spent quite a lot of time working out how I wanted to show this section, and I had bits where it stopped and there was a fast forward and all sorts of things. And ultimately I think what this section is intended to do is just to show to you that I actually did run this test for real with these 8 different scenarios. And some were more or less fun to do than others. The shorter ones obviously were less trying in some ways, but it's interesting to me how actually the bale loaders are, they're really quite fun to use. Even I wasn't expecting to enjoy so much running the wrapper behind the square balers and the one round baler that needed it. So, and that was, it was quite easy for me as just one person with courseplay running the baler to keep up. So I could switch quite quickly between the wrapper, wrap as many things as I could. Then when the baler was on a turn, I'd go and grab the loader and scoop up all the bales that I could while I was waiting for the baler to start on the next run. And I could probably get most of those and then go back to the wrapper, follow the baler, and rinse repeat. And then when I had to then cart the bales up to the farm, then it was quite easy really when I got back to then catch up again with the wrapper to catch up to the baler. And so by the end of each of the different scenarios, I was never that far behind the baler. So as soon as the baler had finished, pretty much all the bales are wrapped and mostly loaded. So it's obviously you have to be quite on your toes to do that. It's a bit more work, but it is very easy for one person to do this as long as you've got just one worker on courseplay running the harvester or forage wagon or baler. And it's also worth pointing out that some of these can be almost completely automated without too much difficulty. So the 2 forage harvesters, you can both of those. I sort of went in and worked out where within courseplay the sort of the middle waypoint was to start the second one off of. And in theory, in that scenario, I ran the silage compactor, but courseplay does a pretty decent job of that as well if you wanted to leave it to it. So you could, just not play the game, I guess, ultimately, or go and do something else while your silage is being collected. But that one is, relatively straightforward to completely automate. But throughout this, the one that is the most, shall we say, challenging is the forage harvester. And I'm hold my hands up, that might just be down to my own ineptitude when it comes to using one of those. But I really, really struggled to use that in an effective and quick manner, because it felt really, really too finicky. I think if you had 2 people in multiplayer, you'd have a lovely time with it. But it's not the easiest thing to automate, and so I absolutely, to be honest, loathed running that bit of the test because it was just such a pain to do. So let's run down the results. So in last, but pretty much last equal, were the forage harvester with single trailer, and the forage wagon working on its own. I say they're probably joint last really because there was a lot of faff with the forage harvester with the carting tractor running into it and all sorts. So you probably would have gained a little bit of time back. But at hour and 15, they're both pretty slow to do this job. Next up, we have the 2 round balers, and there wasn't really an awful lot in it. We're talking less than a minute, which we could put down to error really when it comes to it. So in theory, the Pottinger baler doing 150 centimetre round bales is ever so slightly faster than the fast bale putting out 125 centimetre bales. But this is over 45 minutes roughly. They come in very, very close, and so you could put it down to personal preference. You are doing a lot more carting with the fast bale. It's a lot more trips, so worth bearing in mind when it comes to how you like to run your farm. But in terms of the total amount of time taken, they're broadly the same. Now, you could, I think, make a slightly more sizable difference if you do the baling yourself and don't let courseplay do it, because it is really, as I've said, really conservative when it comes to the amount of time it spends stopped when it's dropping off a bale, and I think you could easily cut that down a bit, which I think might have a significant difference across the field. So then comes the Vermeer. So it is 3 minutes faster than the other 2 round balers, and I guess that's the extra 1 kilometre an hour of working speed giving it an edge, and that I would say is more than could be attributed to error. So I think it is giving you over a field that size a decent enough of an edge to be worth looking at. It probably comes in about the same to buy as a tractor and baler together, so it's a good option. It does require you to also have an extra wrapper and a tractor to run that as well, though. So I think if you were doing a larger field than this, you could make a case for using this. I think perhaps if you wanted to keep things simple, though, there's not too much to choose between it and the other round balers, but you are getting a slight edge in speed there. So then in second place, we have the two forage harvesters working together, and it should be no surprise that adding an extra piece of equipment will, effectively, as it has done here, half the amount of time the job took. So between them, they're still making 10 trips, but each one is only making 5 trips itself. So that really does speed things up. And it's still, they're running at 17 kilometers an hour. They're not stopping during that run. So we just have to deal with the time away from the field for the travel time to drop off the silage in the bunker, which interestingly still makes them faster when they're working together than the round balers. So, and obviously it's very clear this is the fastest way to get silage into a bunker. Then the joint fastest are the two square balers, with the only real difference being the carting that we're doing with them. So the one with the Arcusin had to make significantly more trips, I think 5 trips versus the 2 that the Volvo made. But in the end, it didn't matter because they were both able to effectively keep up with the baler. So it's lending a lot of credence to the theory that working speed is by far and away the most decisive thing when it comes to this. Now, it's not to say that carting isn't going to have a bearing if you have a longer travel time. So there will come at some point a tipping point where it will make a difference because the carter won't get back to the field quickly enough to be able to either pick up the bales, keep up with the baler, I guess, ultimately. Let's just take a little detour into carrying capacity, because I was expecting that to have quite the bearing on this test. So first off, let's look at bale capacity versus forage wagon capacity. So on the left here, we have 5 square bales. Each of those has a capacity of 12,000 litres, and so 5 square bales is more capacity than fits into the largest base game forage wagon. Next up, if we look at the Anderson round bale trailer, which is an absolute hero when it comes to carrying capacity, so we can see that holds just slightly less than 5 of the base game forage wagons. So it's an absolutely stonking 264,000 litres on the Anderson, which I think probably has to be the largest carrying capacity of anything in base game. And I guess you could get it even larger if you wrapped some 180 round bales, which it will carry, but you'd have to wrap them on an extractor and then load them, let them ferment and then load them. But anyway, so for the purposes of this, the Anderson is insane really when it comes to what it will carry. Then if we move on, we can see that the modded bale loader, which you put around a truck with the 41 bales, can carry almost 500,000 litres of fermenting silage, and that's insane. But it didn't actually make any difference. Had it been able to carry the entire, so that field had 550,000 litres on it, so had it been able to carry the entire 550,000 litres, then this would have won the test. But it didn't. It had to make 2 trips, and so it came out the same as the Arcusin, which I think had to make 4 trips, but it only had to make 1 trip after the baler had finished, which I think was decisive. And that's what happened to both of them. They both had to make 1 trip after the baler had finished. Okay, so let's take a look at working speed, because I thought this was going to have an impact, but I think it is actually truly the most decisive thing when it comes to what does well here. So we see that most things, when it comes to stated working speed, have a working speed of 17 kilometers an hour. So that's the forage wagon, the both round balers, the square baler, the Vermeer self-propelled baler goes at 18 kilometers an hour. But what we're really interested here is constant working speed. So the square baler is the only thing that is going constantly at 17 kilometers an hour. The fast bale is dealing with a large swath. It is running not at 17. The Pottinger round baler is achieving 17 at points, but it's having to stop. And the AI is quite conservative with that stopping. So we could have got a better result for it had I been driving it, because I think we could have minimised the downtime a little bit. But nonetheless, it still wouldn't have beaten the square baler. I don't think we'd ever have achieved an average of 17 kilometers an hour across the whole baling of the field. But it would have been faster than the fast bale. The forage wagons, they are going a constant 17. However, they aren't in constant operation. They have to stop. And that means that if we see the example of the single forage wagon, it takes forever to complete the task, because it gets effectively 5 bales full of inside of it, and then we have to go and unload it and come back and unload it and come back. And so that was, I think, 10 journeys. It's not great, right? But when we can run 2 of them together, it's spending more time working on the field at a constant rate. And even though we're still talking 5 journeys for both of the forage wagons, it's still significantly less when it comes to actually the amount of time. It's effectively half when it comes down to it. And then the forage harvester. Now, forage harvester actually only goes at 15 kilometers an hour with that header. And so it is slower across the entire field than the square baler. So I think even had we been able to keep it constantly fed with wagons to keep it moving all the time, I still feel the square baler probably would have beaten it. But owing to Courseplay not wanting to play, or AutoDrive not wanting to play properly with it, I'm not sure. But I think it would have probably come somewhere. It should have been about as fast as the forage wagons, I think. I don't think it would have beaten the square baler though. So what's the conclusion? Well, I think ultimately, if you want to have the fastest possible collection of silage off your field, I'd use the square baler and wrap those bales, and probably use the modded large auto trailer for speed, really. Well, if you've made it this far through the video, thank you very much for watching to the end. I hope you found it useful and informative. And all that's left to say is I hope you enjoy playing more Farm Sim, and I hope this helps you in your farming endeavours.